everything about making money on the emotional system is about the selling of pleasure. It's about, it's like the biggest business on the internet by far is sex. The selling of pleasure, the selling of eye candy. People make a fortune selling eye candy. This is simply a reality. We are deeply, deeply, deeply turned on by the pleasure principle. And half of humanity is here to be sold pleasure. My pitch to you is the pleasure that can come with being yourself. It's just, if you learn to avoid if you can get past avoiding confrontation with the truth of what you are, you can find the pleasure of what it is to be you. And it's a really nice pitch. It's true. That's the advantage of our knowledge. But again, to see that the pitch only works when it comes out of that open center. So when we come to the gates that are moving out of the root and they're pointing towards the emotional system, we are looking at the adrenalization of emotions. Udi. And we're looking at something else. What the root tries to do is that the root tries the best it can to fix the wave. And in fact, it does in a sense. If you have an open emotional system and you've got a gate coming out of it and somebody comes along and fixes it, they do, in fact, fix the wave for you. In other words, you're not open to all of the volatility. You're being fixed in a certain way. And everything about the root is trying to fix the wave, to hold it still in that sense. Right? We begin with the 41st gate, and we begin with, what is the natural beginner, the natural start for us, which is the codon, the initiating codon of the 41st gate. And it is about fantasy, the pressure of fantasy. See, there's something to understand about the third line, is that you can never understand the third line without understanding its motivation. And its motivation is the third color. And the third color is about desire and need, So it's one of the things to understand, the underlying, deep underlying motivation of the third line material mutative plane is desire. And here in the 41st gate, do we ever have desire? Let me sell you a fantasy. Oh, that really works, eh? Selling fantasy. We sell fantasy all the time. And you can motivate, the true selling of spirituality, as you'll see, is in the 19th gate. But the 41st gate, everything from the root center over to the emotional system, they all carry with it this underlying, sell you something you can't get to. Sell you something you can't get to. That always keeps you a customer. It's incredible. You just hold this fantasy that when you die, if you've been good, God is going to invite you to his home in heaven for a party. Golden avenues and smiling angels and shit, all your ancestors are waiting. Everybody's going to be there. Party, 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 party. Oh, hold on to this fantasy, you idiot. And by the way, while you're holding on to this fantasy, it costs me a lot of money to keep on reminding you this. I have to live, I got to feed my children, I got to keep this building going, I have a secretary. Do me a favor here, I'm supplying the fantasy. You pay me. Turning on people's desire. Turning on their desire, the pressure to turn on the desire in others. Crank them up. Efficiency. In times of decrease, selfishness is justified. Oh God, I love this line. Hey? In times of decrease, selfishness is justified. You don't sell desire collectively. You sell desire to the collective selfishness. You sell it to the collective selfishness. In other words, what you do is that you make the entire collective want to share the same desires. You know, you have car companies in the world that make 200 cars a year. And there are probably 100 million men that will go to bed every night fantasizing driving one of them and will never get behind the wheel. You know? The power of desire. And the power of desire when it's attuned to only your selfishness. Only your selfishness. I don't care if it doesn't make sense. I want it. You know? I don't care if it's crazy. I want it. And how do you sell that? It doesn't matter. Go get it. That's me, eh? My open route. Doesn't matter. Go for it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Leave it all behind. Doesn't matter. No choice. No choice. Oh, desire is lovely. Material ambition and the discipline to go it alone, eh? The energy that fuels the feeling for personal ambition. Personal ambition is not about gaining, it's about spending. You know, the other side, the splenic side is, oh, well, we're earning this money and we've got to earn it, we've got to bring it in, we've got to bring it in, we've got to bring it in, we've got to bring it in. The other side is the pleasure principle. We've got to put it out, we've got to put it out, we've got to put it out, we've got to put it out. You know, I want to buy my pleasure. I want to buy my pleasure. I want to buy my pleasure. And all the time, the head center in a cabal with the root center is selling me desire. You know, there's the illuminated head center world on television, you know, advertising. There it is, selling desires. You too can have a body like me, you know. All right, go for it. Selling desire. Selling you things you will never need. Remember, the open head center thinks about things that are not important to it. Look at all the things that you have and recognize how many of them you just don't need. I got a house full of shit I don't need. You know, I don't need it. You know, selfish desire. You know, it's like, oh, right, I got to have that. You know, and I got to have that. I'm a rat, too. It's a burden. Eh? You end up lugging it across oceans, you know. You know, all for this silly desire. And you see, whatever you can sell, you're a sucker for. I mean, it's one of the things to really understand. I mean, it's all not self after all. The variability you have, you know, it's like, you know, the variability you have to hustle somebody is the variability they have to hustle you back, which is why you better be careful. So anyway, when you're dealing with the 41st gate and you're dealing with efficiency, it's how to spend money on pleasure that is fulfilling. Sell them Fantasy Island. Sell them that exotic cruise on the Nile with the terrorists behind bunkers. No, you know, just give them a fantasy. Give them sell them a good fantasy. You know what's the greatest fantasy? Remember, pleasure. Pleasure is not just sex, it's food. And food is really powerful. Eh? Sell them a diet. You know, people make a fortune selling diets. We know that you desire to be beautiful and golden and slim, you know. Let us sell you this fantasy of a size 2.5 dress. You know? Don't you want that? And do you know how many times you get fucked when you look like that? What a life you're going to have? How wonderful it's going to be? And you only need to use this diet. Yes, it's expensive, but it's good. And if it doesn't work, next year we're going to have a new and improved model with a better fantasy for you. Have you ever seen these machines on television that they sell you for your homes? It looks like industrial complexes. Eh? I mean, you wouldn't, I mean, they're frightening. You know, they look like monsters, you know? You know, the fantasy that, you know, I mean, who would want to look like Schwarzenegger? I don't get this. I don't understand this. I always want to take a pin and go boop. You know, boop, and it goes shh. There's also something that bothers me about Arnie. He's always in these very American movies, and he walks up to somebody and he starts talking to them, and nobody ever asks him where he's from. You don't meet people who talk like that. You don't. You know, the guy gets on a bus, he starts talking like somebody from another planet. Nobody ever says, "Where are you from? What is that accent?" You know? Nobody pisses me off. And the guy wants to be a politician. Yeah. Okay, so let us go to the middle now and go to the delights of the 39th gate. The selling of romance. It's one of the biggest businesses in the world. The selling of music. It's one of the biggest businesses in the world. You know, this is all about selling romance. It's all about trying to get people to fall in love with things, to fall in love with them. These are people that have a romance with their work, you know. They have a love affair with the job, you know, whatever the case may be. But this is about the selling of romance. It is about the provoking of the spirit. And it's about bringing out the romantic quality of pleasure, The delight of consuming. This is the great consumer here in the 39. This is the great provocation of consuming, taking in, and taking in to find the things you fall in love with. And once you fall in love with them, you have what is called brand loyalty. It's really mundane, folks. I've been eating Wheaties all my life. I wouldn't look at another cereal box. I shoot you, you bring one into my house, you know? I've been eating the same butter all my life. I'm going to continue to eat the same butter, you know? I'm loyal. I've always bought an Oldsmobile. Always bought a Renault. I have, you know, always. They're good people. I love them. They care about my family. They've been feeding us for years, you know? I'm loyal. I love that. I love it, you know? These are the people that when Coke tried to change its main brand. I mean, you got to be nuts. You had hundreds of millions of people that were in love with their Coke, and you're going to change the recipe? Are you crazy? I mean, you talk about depression. This is a channel of deep depression. They took away my coconut bottle. There are people who get upset when their favorite product changes its packaging. Oh, no, you've ruined it. No, I want it back. Brand, like you fall in love. You know, and it's so provocative because it really sells. This is not about, well, you know, this car has this and this and this and this and this and this, and it's got this ratio and this thing and that blah, 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 and all the detailed shit. No, it's not that. It's the commercial where you see a woman having an orgasm while she's driving. I'm not making that up. It's on TV. She's going, oh! That's love, baby. She's never going to drive another car in her life. You know, and she's going to stay with that model forever. What a great provocation. Oh, I love it. I'm not going to change. You know, you can't get me to buy your product. I love mine. You know, it's powerful stuff. The line is great, though. Responsibility. Right? The avoidance, avoidance, it's one of the deepest themes of the emotional system that it pressures. The avoidance of confronting obstacles if failure puts others at risk. Now, one of the things about this is, if you don't love the product, it puts everybody at risk. Because you'll never be successful. You'll never be successful. You have to genuinely love what you do. And it's one of the great lessons of the 39th gate for life itself, and one of the primary pressures of the material way is to love what you do. You either love it as yourself, you love it as your life, you love it as your work, whatever it may be. But to love what you do is essential. It's one of the great teachings of self-love, is that when you operate correctly and you get rid of your inferiority complex, you know, you can begin to see that what you enter into correctly, you have a different bond to it, and you can fall in love with it. I mean, truly fall in love with it. There's this great romance. And what you fall in love with, remember, this goes back to truth doesn't stand alone. This goes back to the fight of the 38th gate, that, you know, you've got to fight with those who will stand beside you and fight, and you can't love it alone. And I'm talking about business. You can't be the only one that loves it. That's why I brought up the testimonial. You can't be the only one that loves it. You've got to empower other people to love it. You know, the 39th gate is a tease. You know, it's one of the great ways in which we get our fires of passion turned on, is that we're teased. You know, have you ever go into a modern paperback bookstore? It looks like everybody is having sex on the covers, even if it's about dogs. And you know, it's attractive. People go over and see if there's any other pictures. It's a little bit of a tease. It's like, well, you'll never know what you find in these pages. Oh, okay, you know, I'll look in here. Can I fall in love with this? Is this going to turn me on? You got to tease them. It's one of the main tricks of selling the truth, is that in order to sell the truth, you've got to give some of it away. You know? It's a provocation. Oh, I'm so good at that. I'm so good at dangling out a little something and 2 years later explaining it to you.
Or not.
Or not, but you can see the passion. Was that on film? Oh. It's okay, I'm retired. The great benefic, whose first consideration is for the larger framework. You see, in order for the truth to stand, it cannot stand without love. That's what I like about the truth. Only the truth stands and stands with love. And that means passion. If you don't have a passion for the truth, then you cannot struggle to bring it out in the world. You have to have a passion. And so when you're looking at empowerment, remember, we have different jobs. You know, if you see that your theme is really through empowerment, you know, if you're somebody like me who's very individual and you recognize what the theme of empowerment is, then I have to see that every time that I'm looking at a third line theme in any individual gate, I'm looking at a thematic that applies to me. You know, it's something that's very important for me to grasp on the material plane. on the material plane. You know, that this is part of what the material plane is about. It is taking the responsibility of recognizing that the truth does not stand alone, so you have to bring that love to somebody else, which means you have to tease them. Tease them. We'll give you the first night free in our new hotel in what used to be a terrible swamp. Okay, you know, something for nothing. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe there's something in that. You know, what do we do in design? You know, you go to a website design, you know dick about design, you go to a website, you know, and there's all these teasers. And they're good teasers. You know, they give you lots of good pieces of information, never give you the whole story, but we deal in the truth, and I'm an empowerer. And the only way you can empower the truth is that you bring out passion in the other. Look how much passion there is for this knowledge. And how much love there is in this room for this knowledge. You know, because truth has to be loved. If it isn't loved, it's not truth. If it doesn't build that fire in you, it's not truth. You know, so the selling of truth is the mastery of the tease. How do you tease them? How do you get them to fall in love? Yeah? How do you bring them in? The 19th gate. You know, we have a great mutative phase that's happening in our evolutionary process. We've all had long times to discuss this. The transformation in 2027, the rave children, the transformation of the solar plex system, the mutation that's taking place in the histidine codon, the mutation that as a result is taking place in both the 49th gate and the 55th gate. So the 55th gate is the primary place for mutation. When the mutation takes hold in the 49th gate, the channel 1949, the channel of synthesis will collapse. It will collapse. That collapse will lead to many things. It will lead to a radical change in the viability of the human diet. Something very important to understand about eating. The stomach is in the ego center. The only cross-special connection we have that directly connects to the stomach is our cross-special connection with reptiles, with fish, and with birds. The only natural animal, the only natural creature that we are here, the only natural creatures that we are here to take into our bodies, the only ones that we are designed to naturally digest are either reptile, fish, or fowl. So it's something to recognize about the nature of our stomach and the nature of eating. The second thing is that we have the 1949. Now the 1949 is a mystical channel. And it's through this mystical channel that we have one of our three cross-special connections to mammals. And it's through this channel, through the 49th gate of revolution, the gate of the butcher, the gate of the sacrificer and the sacrificed, that we have the ritual slaughter of animals, and we have the deification through animism out of the pressure of the 19th gate of these animals into the hierarchy, into a special place of recognition. It is not natural for our stomachs, the eating of meat. As a matter of fact, the eating of mammals is only possible when there is the presence of the 4037, because the 4037 brings the meat to the stomach naturally. And that the only way that meat can be eaten in a healthy way is that if it's eaten in groups. I was enjoying that yesterday at the lunch, that there was a whole bunch of us eating beef. And there was this huge aura, and it was full of 4037s and, you know, the 3955 energy and all of that. Within that context, as ritual, it's correct. Thing to recognize about rave children, solar plex altered children, it will not be possible for them to eat meat. Not be possible. In other words, this will not be an intellectual decision. This will not be a taste decision. They will simply regurgitate it immediately. They will simply not be able to hold it in their body. They will not be able to use meat. So it's one of the things to see is that we're going to go through a dietary change, And it is a strong recommendation of mine that, eat meat in the company of others. That's a really good idea. But fish and fowl, most of you won't eat reptile. Fish and fowl, though I can recommend snake, fish and fowl is something that is naturally healthy for us, and it's the proper meat to bring into our body. That digression's for a purpose. And it's for a purpose in the sense that we're dealing with food and food resources. And it's one of the things to recognize about the 19th gate is that, the pleasure principle of the 19th gate is abundance. And out of that, not self-pleasure. In other words, to have the resources of as much food as possible to be secure. Out of that has come the whole food greed business. The vast amounts of food that are available, the vast amounts of land that have been turned over unproductively to the growing of beef. There's nothing more inefficient, nothing that degrades the soil more than the raising of beef. It's an enormous waste of land, of water. If it weren't for the fact that the prices are outrageous, it would not be profitable. It just isn't. And if you really equated the destruction of the land resources, you would see that in the end it is not profitable at all. But that's another story. We are going into a decline in terms of the usage of meat. We've already seen here in Europe epidemics of diseased animals because our greed has forced us to raise them in appalling conditions, to feed them in appalling ways, in order to be able to satisfy this spiritual greed. Spiritual. See, the 19th gate, it sells dedication. That's the third line. Okay? Receptivity to approach can only be maintained through vigilance. The natural ease with which communion is maintained. Sensitivity and ease fueled by acceptance by others. Now remember, we're dealing with a tribal support gate. And we're dealing with the pressure to be dedicated, the pressure to be vigilant, and the pressure to be dedicated and vigilant in securing the forces. We call them armies and the police and, the food certificate board and the drug, whatever organization and this and that and on and on and on and on and on. The 19th gate carries with it a pressure to control the territory of pleasure and food through dedication and vigilance. I am going to protect our food. Right now in the West, the selling of security systems is at an all-time high. The selling of $200 a day bodyguards is at an all-time high. And this is all coming out of the 19th gate and the pressure of the 19th gate to preserve one's territory and its resources. Great money in that. Now, of course, the ultimate policeman is God. Well, it's true, no? God's the ultimate policeman or policewoman. She's black, she's from Nubia or something. But whatever the case may be, whether it's a mythical he or she, they're the police. If you're bad, not only am I going to punish you, but I'm going to punish your seed. I'm going to punish your mother, your father. It's like when the Israelis get a suicide bomber and they find out their address. They go bomb the family house. Until the 75th generation. And the gods of the East are no better. Next life. Good karma this time. Good karma next time. Be good. Good dharma this time. Good karma next time. Yeah. Let me sell you the territory of heaven. I'll give you a key. You die killing this American bastard, and you get 72 virgins, baby. Here's the key. selling dedication and vigilance. Out of this you get peace marchers who kill. People who want to save animals from torture, who bomb laboratories with scientists inside. You get every kind of madness you can imagine, and all with great vigilance. And if you want to make money from this, oh, you can. Oh, boy, can you ever. We're going to protect you. We're going to make you secure. We're going to guarantee you always have your resources. It's the tribe, after all. Where do you think the Japanese got life contracts from? This is a 19th gate business. Right? 19th gate. Right? For life. For life. You guarantee it, and I will give you my dedication and my vigilance. But you guarantee me my resources. There's a fantasy in that. Now it's all being taken away. And they're upset, obviously. Support mechanisms. So one of the things to see about the 19th gate is that the 19th gate sells the pressure to be committed in both sense of the word. This is all about the driving force behind the potential of blind dedication and vigilance to resources. I will defend this turf to the last minute. And it's something essential to understand about the nature of, I live this out in design, have all these years, national organization, territories, people have their territorial concerns. It is a natural thing. It's a natural thing to be vigilant in the defense of your resources and territory. It is natural. So it's one of the things to understand, that this has to be maintained through vigilance, but it's interesting to see that it is about sensitivity and ease. It's about creating sensitivity and ease. How much easier it is for all of us to be together when we're not concerned about not having resources. And that having resources is one of the few things to be vigilant about. Remember, the 1949 is the whole channel of the building of the marriage contract. It's the bride and the groom. It's the 19 looking in its flirtatious way towards the 49 and saying, will we be able to have resources? Will there be enough? Will you give me what I need? And think about everything about the 19th gate is that the way you sell vigilance is that you sell it through physically embracing others. That's how you get them to be vigilant with you. We are comrades, Arm in arm, we face the struggle together. You ever seen these silly people at protests? They all have the same thing. Have you ever seen that? They all got these handles. It's just they wave these handles in the air and everybody's grabbing everybody else's handle and they're walking down the street, we are the International, we are the Brotherhood, blah, 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 blah. Oh, how wonderful. All through touch. Don't you dare break that bond. Don't you dare walk with your hands by their side. This is the root of communism. This is the root of communism. This is the root of socialism. This is the root of all of that stuff. We are vigilant together. We protect the resources together. We share the resources together, except it's not sharing. It's support, and it's about the deal. Yes, we are all equal. Yes, but some of us are more equal than others. What to do? And we are the great defenders of the vigilance. And we have a right to have access to more resources than you. Look at what we're doing for you. you would think that nobody in their right mind would buy that shit. But nobody does have the right mind. You know? All these open head centers saying, oh, that's good, okay. Right. And then what you do is that you plaster it. Remember, we're still the relationship of pressure centers from the root to the head. You plaster it all over your television, your newspapers, whatever. All these people in arms together, all these people working together, all these people being recognized together, all of these people supporting each other, all of these people at the great banquet table together. The harvest pictures, eh? There we all are, brothers. Here we are. Oh, shit. Really? I'm a 49, you know. I know this sales pitch so good. I could have been such a good dictator. Oh, I could have been I was once, eh? I was really good. I was really good. I was so good I was really bad. But I was really good. It's so easy to see that movie. You know, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you so that you can be safe. Look at what I've done for you. Look at what we have done for you. Look at our great and wonderful brotherhood of service to you. Yes, my car's big. And I have a refrigerator. Na, 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 na. Yeah. And you know how they do that. You know how they get there. You know how you become a dictator. You take the food from those who have and you give it to those who don't. That's how you do it. It's really simple. It's so simple. Because then they believe you. You know, you go in, you kill all the intelligentsia. I mean, who needs that shit, eh? You kill all the intelligentsia. You know, you get that done in a moment. You know? You go ahead and you put on some really wonderful open market, here's food. You know, you give everybody food, you give everybody land, you tell them they can all work together in happiness and brotherhood and blah, blah, blah. You loot the bank accounts. That's another story. After all, you got to grease the dictatorship. You kill those who have, and you give to those who don't, and they will serve you. Amazing. Saddam Hussein came in on a coup, eh? A coup d'etat, 1978. Came in with the promise of chicken in every pot. Well, okay. The people so easily fooled. So easily fooled. What a great market vigilance is. It really is, eh? Where am I going to go? Okay. Otherwise, I'll stay there too long. Let us go now. Let us go to the 53. The material way and the material way in which it operates for the collective and the individual is outside the nature of the tribe, outside the nature of support and the deals and everything else. And the vigilance, nobody protects their business interests more than the tribe. Eh? I mean, they'll kill you. They'll kill you. You know, they're going to protect their resources. They're going to protect their business at all costs. They can be savage in the defense of it. When you're dealing with the individual and you're dealing with the collective, you're dealing with established or the potential of established frequencies that we call format energies. And remember that in this context, the nature of the working world is established through three frequencies. There's only three frequencies to the working world, and I say that in the sense that, the sacral center defined is the center of work. So when we're looking at the format energies, we're looking at three specific frequencies of work, of the workplace, and three frequencies in the way in which life is generated to the outside world. Remember that the Maya is maintained by generators. So everything about the illusion we live in, everything about the world that we live in is generated by the 9 gates of the sacral center. I mean, that's really something to consider. So here what we're looking at is we're looking at the pressure to establish certain specific frequencies. When we're dealing with the abstract, and we're dealing with the 53rd gate, again, we're dealing with the gate of beginnings, the idea, the root of freedom, the freedom of the not self of the root center. You know, I got to get things done quickly in order to be free. That freedom can be seen as an archetype in the 53rd gate. 53rd gate says, I need to be free to start things. I need to be free to start things. I want to be free to start things. I want to be able to get things going. And to get things going, the theme, the frequency is practicality. Third line, in its most natural position, the concentrating on avoiding conflict to ensure protection and continued development. Avoiding conflict. And this is one of the keys to the experiential process. And it's one of the keys to abstract money making, is the avoidance of conflict. And so what you have is no conflict service. You know, this is something that I learned about very quickly, the difference between, for example, North America and its long-standing entrepreneurial, service-oriented culture. And what I met when I came and have spent the last 20 years in Europe. When you go into a shop in America, 99.99% of the time, you're going to meet somebody who enthusiastically greets you and wishes to offer their service. I mean, enthusiastically. Okay? There's a problem? Oh, what is it? You know, in America, there's this saying, the customer is never wrong, or the customer is always right. You know, the customer comes back with the whatever it is, and they don't like the fact that the side of the box that it's packaged in was torn. You know, the policy of most places is give them a new box. Just give them a new box. Don't fight with them. Don't have a conflict with your customers. You're never going to make money having a conflict with your customers. And if you have a conflict with your customers, they're not going to desire, same circuitry, they're not going to desire to do business with you anymore. And you will not be their fantasy, you know? They will not recognize you as somebody that can fulfill their desire for this thing or that thing or whatever. So one of the things to recognize is that the moment that you get to frequency, what you get to is, how do you handle the customer? This is different than what we've seen before when you're looking at strategies, you know, both the strategies of intelligent survival and the strategies of food and sex and resources. Is that what you're looking at here when you're moving from the root center into the sacral system, is that you're looking about how to deal with those who can bring you income as clients, as customers, as whatever. In other words, this is a technique about getting to them, and it's all about the frequency. And there's only 3, so you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Okay, so the first thing to recognize is that if you're selling desire, you have to have the highest levels of customer service. Because if you're selling desire, you're not going to get satisfaction all the time. You're going to get what desire leads to, crisis. You told me that this was going to be wonderful. You lied. It's okay, honey. We'll give you your money back. We're really sorry. It was a bad day. I know that your hair looks awful, but you know, hopefully next time, you can bring in your children for free next week. No, we won't do the same thing. You know, you're going to sell fantasy. You got to sell high-level customer service. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Desire needs that because desire is so nebulous. How easy it is for people to be disappointed with their expectation. I mean, after all, everything about the abstract is you're selling expectation. If I go to this luxurious place, you know, in the tropics, I'm going to have this miraculous, romantic, wonderful vacation in the sun, you know, and then it rains and the place is full of cockroaches and, you know, it's like, oh, you know, and that travel agency, it's like, We'll give you another ticket. It's okay. Complimentary. We'll put you up in a 4-star hotel. We'll do this. If you're going to sell desire, you have to sell the highest level of service. So it's something very important. And obviously, those beings that are coming out of the root, this is their potential. This is one of the avenues that is there, money-making avenues, to teach and to sell those kinds of services. In other words, to make sure that there's a practical infrastructure for dealing with the frequency of desire, dealing with it. And remember that the whole thing about desire is to get people to the other end so that they can look back and say, oh, that was so nice. And these people, I tell you, the moment I had a problem, they were right there. They were so helpful. They were so nice. These people make a fortune for you. They tell their friends, oh, really? Because things never go right in the desire business. They don't. There's always something that's going to go wrong. There's always some little hitch, some little problem, the toilet clogs up. There's always something. The electricity goes off. There's always something. And if you're pitching expectation, you got to deliver the service. People don't mind that things go wrong. Third line way. People don't expect everything to be perfect, but they do expect to have service. If you don't give them the service, they never come back. They can actually have a terrible time, but if you treat them like gold, they'll use your service again. And hopefully the next time, because there is a law of limitation. You can only send them to rat-infested resources once. The second time you really better look after them. Okay, let's go over to the other side of the collective. Everything about the logical process is the value of assessment. It is the keynote of the 52nd hexagram. And assessment is about focus and concentration. It is. And when you're dealing with the 52nd gate, one of the things about selling the future is you can't sell the future without controls. Oh, think about the way things work. Remember, we're servicing the client. Now, you can't sell the future without controls because the future is unpredictable. You've got a pattern. You've got a pattern. And what you're trying to do is control people to the pattern. So, for example, it doesn't do you a lot of good when you're selling somebody a diet to provide them with good service. In other words, they get fat and they complain. There isn't a hell of a lot you can do for them. So it isn't going to be worthwhile for you, to provide high-level service for people on diets. That's why you get a zillion diet books and they don't give a shit about you. However, it can be successful, sort of, if you have control. And the future is about control. Now, of course, the whole thing about logic is the logic collective always wants to control you. Always. And it's always selling you on the advantages of being controlled. Now, that's a really nice pitch. This is the way in which, the logic serves you. How nice. We serve you by controlling you. External enforcement of inaction. External. The ability by its very nature to understand restraint. So you have to restrain them with the potential in acceptance to use the period to redefine strategies. Blah, blah, blah. You can see how all these lines are really right there. And when you're looking at controls, all you're looking at is that in order for logic to make money, you have to control them. Got to control them. Well, here's the Human Design Educational Program, and we want to get to a point where people are awake at the end of the program. So we have this control mechanism that we're going to institute for the logical future. You're going to have to do step 1, you're going to have to step 2, we're going to check it out, we're going to make sure you're really doing it, we really are going to control you, and when you get to the end, you're going to be very happy, and we will have made a good deal of money in doing all that. Selling the value of control. Oh, the collective loves it. See, for the collective, it's one or the other. If you're not going to control me so I feel safe, then back me up when I'm on my own and provide me with good service. You know, it's the same movie, just the other side of the coin. The collective process. And the collective process from the root to the sacral is about dealing with the other and keeping them involved as clients and customers. Don't you love the fact that I control this for you? How easy I make your life. How easy everything is for you. I organize things for you. You know, everything's laid out for you. You know, you sell the fantasy of a vacation and then you see what people do in order to make sure that they have a good time. You know, you have travel agents that send somebody with you that control you the whole way. You know, take you to the right restaurants, put you in the right hotel, take you out in the morning to piss, take you at night to, take you to the right club, take you home before you're dead drunk, go on and on and on. That's the business of the collective. Let us control you one way or another so that you can keep on feeding us so that we can have resources. And finally for today, which is really appropriate, limitation, because that's where I'm at right now. I always love this opening line, the acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. And this is one of the things about understanding the nature of trying to sell the truth to others. And you can only sell the truth to others by making it conservative. Now think about how funny that is. Well, look at the way it works. Everything about knowing is that knowing is new. Knowing is mutation. Now the only way to establish mutation is to make it ordinary. To make it ordinary. And the moment that it's ordinary, if that's your truth, you're actually being conservative. It's the other side. In other words, it becomes an established value. And the whole goal of limitation, the whole goal is the transcendence of truth, the new, the mutative, to normalcy, to being integrated into the larger society. Remember, truth cannot stand alone. Truth must have its allies that fight beside it, that fall in love with it as well. The companionship of empowerment through love. So you have to see that enlightened self-interest that naturally handles restrictions and limitations, ensuring identity and security, the energy to maintain identity and security despite limitations. And the only way that you sell the truth as a mutative force is that you keep on insisting it's your truth. Over and over and over and over again. I make a joke about individuality. My 4323. There's a disease that's called Tourette's syndrome. And in Tourette's syndrome, these are people that they'll get caught up with a sound. 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 These are people that just say, it's really there, that this is the whole thing about the truth. It's the whole thing about imprinting the truth as a mutation. How many times have I told you to live your strategy? How many times have I repeated endlessly, repeating it over and over and over again? I know. Now you see, the collective has to say, okay, let me be of service. The collective has to say, okay, let me be in control. The individual just keeps on saying, I know. You want to buy it? I know. You want to buy it? I know. You want to buy it? It is the marketing of the certainty of knowing. This is my limitation. This is what I know. This is what I know. This is what I know. This is knowing. This is knowing. Don't you love it? Don't you love it? Doesn't it turn you on? Don't you want to stand with me here in the storm? You know? There was a great comment in a movie many, many years ago. I can't remember the name right now. But it was somebody who made the comment, well, the world's a business. And it is. The body graph's a business. It is. You know, it is a fabulous microcosm for seeing greater truths. Right? So we've seen the pressure. And when you take a look all together at these 12 gates, you're looking at the basic material pressures of life. You're looking at the pressure to inspire. You're looking at the pressure to develop the strategies. You're looking at the pressure to find the pleasure and the resources. You're looking at the pressure to satisfy the customer and maintain the viability of the enterprise. This is the pressure. The pressure is always there. Everything else, as we go through the next 2 days, everything else is going to be nuances within that larger pressure. The not-self mind. I played the piano for 5 hours yesterday, and my mind, when I got up this morning, said, fuck them. Let them figure it out themselves. Anyway, the piano will wait for me. The sacral center. I want to make some things clear because I want to make some things clear. When I talk about that you make money out of the not-self, doesn't mean that you can only make money with somebody else who has that center open. Please understand that. The fact that you have an open center means that's your outlet. That's your way of attracting what is out there for you. In essence, your open center is your material direction in that sense. But it doesn't mean that you only impact other open centers. You impact the not-self. And whether that other being has that center open or not is not the point at all. For example, let's take a look at the sacral center. Now, the sacral center, 70% of humanity, all generators. We know that the sacral center is the center of work. We know that the open sacral, that the strategy of the open sacral is that it doesn't know when enough is enough. So if you want to make money out of the open sacral, you make money out of figuring out when enough is enough, because the open sacral is the only thing that can be wise about that, after all, if it's not being conditioned by it. Now, what is the basic plague of all generators? The basic plague of all generators, in terms of the concept of work, is that they are quitters. They're quitters. The not-self generator is the great quitter. They're always quitting. They quit out of frustration. So it's one of the things to understand about the power of selling through the open sacral. The open sacral